Before the accidental discovery of lithium salts in 1948 for treating mania and the discovery of other drugs such as reserpine and chlorpromazine in 1950s for controlling schizophrenia, sufferers had little choice but to come to terms with their illness. Once reliable drugs were available, creative people had to decide upon the advantage and disadvantage of taking them. Robert Lowell took lithium in late 1960s and found himself both relieved from breakdown and more poetically productive. But he told the neurologist Oliver Sacks, "My poetry has lost much of its force," and it is true that Lowell's later poems post-lithium are not as highly regarded by critics as his earlier work. With others too, there does appear to be a trade-off between quantity and quality. According to 1979 study of artists with manic depression, bipolar disorder, who were given lithium carbonate by their psychiatrist Mogens Shaw, taking lithium can allow someone to work again, but at some cost to insights obtained during manic highs. As the poet Gwyneth Lewis, the first national poet of Wales, remarks in his essay Dark Gifts, written for the collection Poets on Prozac, only one of my 8 books have been written while taking antidepressants, so I find it very difficult to distinguish between the effect of the medication and a development of my own style away from ornamentation and towards greater display, which of all literary effects require the most skill and is the most difficult to achieve. Even if it was proven that antidepressants adversely affected my ability as a poet, I would still take them. After being a zombie for months, being able to write at all is a miracle. And that participation in the creative discipline rather than a more objective measure of excellence is the bottom line for me. To psychologists, the issue of productivity versus excellence is of compelling interest for the light it sheds on the nature of genius. While mania without doubt increases productivity, might it also sometimes improve quality too. If a creative person has a sustained burst of energy and self-confidence, it would seem reasonable that this would have a positive influence on his or her work. On the other hand, mania is likely to preclude the operation of the critical faculty essential for exceptional creativity, which edits with cool attachment what has been created passionately. In other words, simply put, does madness enhance or diminish genius? With this in mind, the psychologist Robert Wiesberg analyzed in 2 separate studies the output of 2 major artistic compositions of Robert Schumann and the poems of Emily Dickinson. Both have been retrospectively diagnosed as sufferers from manic depression, bipolar disorder, though this is more certain for Schumann than for Dickinson. He attempted suicide more than once and ended his short life in a mental asylum where he starved himself to death in 1856. Dickinson had a more conventional and somewhat longer life but became a recluse for almost 2 decades before his death in 1886. Almost all of her poetry was published posthumously.